Hi, my name is John Jewell, and I'm one of the owners here at Jewell Tone Music in beautiful downtown historic Culpeper, Virginia. We wanted to take a few minutes to do this video to talk about what to look for in your first electric guitar. We started selling guitars about 3 years ago simply because I got tired of seeing people getting ripped off on their first guitar. And as a guitar teacher, you see a lot of things that come through our school. And I'm just amazed at some of the things I've seen. Zebra painted guitars, blue guitars, pink guitars, sparkle guitars, things with stars and all sorts of stuff on it. And usually that's a pretty good indication that that's not a very good quality instrument. And so that's kind of my first recommendation is don't buy a guitar based upon the way it looks. Buy it based upon the way it sounds and the way that it feels to whoever's going to play that guitar. So I hope in just the next few minutes we can arm you with a little bit of information here that's going to help you when you're going out and looking for your first guitar. Now there are typically two kinds or two shapes, body shapes of guitars that are out there. One is called a single cutaway, and this is an example of the single cutaway guitar. If you can see this, okay. So this is a single cutaway guitar, commonly referred to as a Les Paul design guitar. The other one that is very common out there is a double cutaway, and this would be an example of a double cutaway guitar. And this would be known as a Stratocaster style guitar. So those are going to be the most common things that you're going to see out there. The other thing that's going to be very common with these kinds of guitars is the way the neck is attached or set to the body of the guitar. So most of the lower cost entry-level guitars are going to have what's called a bolt-on neck design. And again, this is what you're going to see. Right here you see the 4 bolts on the back holding the neck to the guitar body. There's nothing wrong with this design. This was actually invented by Leo Fender, of Fender guitar fame, pretty close to 70 years ago. They've been using it ever since, and it's just worked fantastic. And I've got a Stratocaster and a Telecaster with bolt-on neck, and I love them, and they play great and they sustain great. So there's nothing wrong with this style, and it is just a very common kind of thing that you're going to see in the lower cost guitars. Now if you get into what's called a set neck or a neck through design, those guitars are typically going to be costing a little bit more money, and you're not going to see them too often in the lower or entry level kinds of guitars. The other thing to consider is the woods, okay, and we just talked a moment ago about this. When you start seeing guitars that are, there's nothing wrong with solid painted guitars if they come from a good manufacturer, but typically I like to have something that shows the wood grain so you can actually see the wood grain of the guitar. You can see a little bit about what you're getting. Now the woods that are on something like this and the other guitar that I showed you are not going to be the most expensive guitar woods that you can buy, but the good news is if you buy them from a good quality manufacturer like Fender Squier, Epiphone. In this case, this happens to be a J. Terzer guitar. The other one that I have is a cork guitar. All these woods are kiln dried, and so they are aged and they're good quality woods, but they're not going to be as good as a piece of solid mahogany that's maybe 60 years old or going to have a flamed maple top on them and things like that. That's where you start getting into the additional increased costs of the guitar, typically are in the woods and also the way the neck is designed. So that's the first thing I'd recommend, is just if you can find something that you can actually see the wood grain through it, that's a good starting point. The other thing that I want to talk about, the next thing I do is when I picked up a guitar, is I would just take my hand and run it up and down the fretboard like this. And do I feel any really sharp edges on the frets? Because this is just an indication of poor guitar design, and we see this a lot on just inexpensive instruments, and it can vary. It's just amazing. If this was like, this guitar is $135, I can pick up another $135 guitar out of a not very good factory, and you can actually cut your fingers on the frets as you're going up. So that's certainly the next thing that I would do, is just run my hand up and down the fretboard. Does it feel nice and smooth? Does the back of the neck feel nice and smooth to me? And you can see that this particular guitar has a nice finish to it. The next thing you want to do is to come up here to the tuners, to the headstock, and get this so you can take a look at this. These are the tuners up at the top here. And then what I would do is I would take each one of these and I would just kind of, take my hand and put them on there and feel, do these feel good and tight, or are they really, really loose? And if they're good and tight, that's typically going to indicate that they're pretty good tuners that are on there, and the guitar is probably going to stay in tune pretty well. And that's going to be important for a beginner guitar student as well, because if the guitar is always losing tune or they don't know how to tune the guitar, they're never going to get a sense of pitch, and that's not something that you want to have. The other thing here is if you just look at the very edge here, if you can kind of see that there are little screws in the end of each one of these tuning pegs. And these allow you to adjust the tension of each of the tuners so that you can tighten that down a little bit, and that will actually hold the pitch a little bit longer. One of the things that I've certainly learned in all my years of teaching guitar is that if you put a poor quality instrument in the hand of a student, they're going to lose interest in playing that guitar pretty quickly. So these are definitely things to take a look at. One of the other areas that I want you to consider is the fretboard, and hopefully you can kind of see this a little bit here, is that this fretboard is got some wood grain in it. It's actual solid wood. It's a form of a renewable rosewood. Typically you're going to see on guitars are going to be rosewood or renewable sustainable versions of rosewood. So they're going to vary in quality. Rosewood tends to give a little bit more of a softer tone to the guitar. If you happen to find one with ebony, it's going to be a darker, actually more percussive sound to the guitar. And then the brighter necks are typically made out of maple. And some of those are solid maple and some of those are maple capped. And you can learn a little bit more about that with some of the research. But just take a moment to look at the fretboard and see, can I actually see some wood grain in here? And if you can, then that's a good indication that it's probably a solid piece of wood. The other thing you want to avoid is something that's called blackenized. So they actually color the fretboard to make it look real black and dark like that. You can almost see it looks like it's painted. That kind of stuff you definitely want to stay away from. And then the last thing I just want to suggest is that there are a couple of different pickup styles that you're going to get on this particular guitar here. We have what are called single coil pickups. So when you pick up the guitar, you want to go through all the pickup selections and play and make sure that each pickup is playing correctly. I would take the volume controls, the volume knobs here, and the tone knobs, and I would just feel them. Do they feel real cheap, or do they feel nice and smooth? And that's also another indication of a pretty good quality instrument as well. And then just one other thing that you might want to consider here is actually where the guitar is plugged in. Is this being plugged into a plastic backing plate, or is it a metal backing plate? This can actually make some difference too, in terms of I see these things get loose all the time. If you take a look at the other guitar that I showed you earlier, the single cutaway guitar, this happens to have what are called humbucking pickups on it. Okay, and you can see that there look like two of those single coils that are actually put together, and then the toggle switch for these are up on the top, and this is only a 3-weight position. Okay, there's a lot of other things to be looking for in guitars. You can look at the quality of the bridges, but typically those kinds of things are pretty much standard on most of these guitars, the quality. And then the last thing is to look at is what's called the action on the neck, and that's the distance of the string to the fretboard. Is it real high? Is it pretty easy to put your fingers on the guitar? Do you feel like you're really pressing down hard? If you are, again, not a good quality instrument, and I would certainly not consider that guitar. So when you put your fingers on the fretboard, is it easy to play? And that's an important factor to consider as well. So anyway, I hope this brief little video has been a little bit of help to you. Our information is right down here. Right here, there you go. And if you would like to give us a call, we'd be more than happy to talk with you about the guitars that we carry, but also if we don't have something that's in stock or would be a good fit for you, I'm more than happy to guide you into something that we feel would be a good quality instrument. Our goal here is just to get good quality guitars into our students' hands or beginning guitar players' hands so that we can have the joy of music for a long period of time. So thanks again for taking a few moments to watch this, and I hope this was of some help. Have a great day.